Greetings all. Today is December 24, 2023, and I will be reading Chapter 1 out of my newest release, Brooklyn Bridges, a novel. Chapter 1, Brooklyn Bridges. The First Bank of San Antonio was abuzz with activity as dozens of customers waited in line to get their weekend started. It was well after 6 o'clock, and the bank was officially closed. But the bank's manager chose to keep the doors open to make up for the inconvenience of the broken drive-through ATM. Brooklyn Bridges kept one eye on the clock and the other on the long line of customers that never seemed to get any shorter. This evening, when the manager informed Brooklyn to leave the comfort of her office to fill in for one of the tellers who had left early, she tried her best to keep her frustration in check. She was pissed. It wasn't that being a teller was beneath her, but she had worked extremely hard to get that position as a financial advisor. She popped a stick of gum in her mouth to help ward off the hunger pains rumbling in her stomach. Although it was the end of the work week, she despised Fridays more than any other day, especially when it happened to fall on the first of the month. Seemed like everybody and his brother was at the bank trying to get some cash for the weekend. Several of the mostly Mexican customers tightly clutched their weekly paychecks, grumbling amongst themselves about how slow the tellers were moving. A few men joked in Spanglish they could have gone across the street for a beer and then returned to the same spot in line. If Brooklyn could give any of those men a word of advice, she would have told them to have their paychecks direct deposited into their accounts. No company worth a damn still paid their employees with paper checks. On the other hand, as long as there were folks who refused to join the 21st century and do their banking online, her job with the bank was secure. "I can help the next person in line," she called out impatiently. A well-dressed man at the head of the line took his cue to finally move forward. He approached Brooklyn's station and waited for the distracted woman to acknowledge him. When several seconds passed without a greeting, he cleared his throat loudly to get the teller's attention. Brooklyn's head remained down while she moved a stack of deposit slips into the teller's drawer. She heard the man clear his throat, but she was not in the mood to be pleasant. "What can I do for you?" she asked without looking up. "Good evening, miss. How are you doing today?" Making small talk was not one of Brooklyn's personality traits, and she certainly wasn't about to pick it up now, especially since she couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. She glanced at her wristwatch. It was 30 minutes after closing time, meaning she was now working overtime. "Well, I'm doing fine, thank you for asking," he replied sarcastically when she failed to respond. "How can I help you, sir?" Brooklyn sighed, ignoring the man's sarcasm, instead focusing on the computer screen with fingers poised, ready to enter his information. "I would like to deposit this check into my account, please." She pushed a blank deposit slip towards the man's hand and instructed, "You need to fill this out." He laughed good-naturedly and replied, "If you would stop staring at that screen for a moment, you might have noticed that I have already done that." Brooklyn loudly exhaled her annoyance and slowly lifted her gaze from the computer screen to face this customer who insisted on trying her last nerve. And when she did, her mouth literally dropped open. Standing before her was a man who could have been a model. He was in his mid to late 30s, with skin the color of mahogany, a chiseled jawline, closely cropped hair with a sprinkling of gray, and a hint of a day's growth of beard, all played well against a set of pearly whites. His eyes were slightly crinkled at the edges as his playful smile teased the corners upwards. Dressed fashionably in a stylish blue suit that fit his athletic body perfectly, he stood out from all the other customers. The man oozed power and success from every pore. He was not dressed like the typical San Antonian businessman who normally opted for more casual, weather-appropriate garb or blue jeans and cowboy boots. Brooklyn's mouth suddenly felt like it was filled with cotton balls dipped in talcum powder. Should I scan my debit card now? He asked, amused by the teller's reaction. Just to make sure you deposit it in the right account. Yes, she stammered, unable to find her voice to say more. The bank certainly is busy this evening, the man said, scanning the customers queued up in line. I usually use the drive-through ATM, but it's out of service. Just as well, I decided to come inside because I want to make sure this check gets deposited correctly. The ATM is broken? Oh, that explains the long line, she thought. He nodded and slid his debit card through the scanner. His information popped up on Brooklyn's screen. She squinted at the screen to make sure she got his name right. Besides depositing your check, is there something else I can help you with, Mr. Robertson? He signed the back of the check and pushed it towards her ever so slightly. Please, call me Hodge. As you wish, Hodge. Brooklyn almost swallowed her gum when she saw the amount of the check. It was made out to Hodge Robertson in the amount of $11,300,000. Her eyes automatically went from the check to Mr. Robertson's eyes, back to the check, then finally rested on a diamond-encrusted gold band he wore on his left hand. She quickly averted her gaze, trying her best to focus only on the account information on the screen. Is there something wrong? She blinked twice to make sure the numbers she saw were correct. After she composed herself, trying her best to maintain a sense of professionalism, after all, this wasn't her money, she was able to proceed with the transaction. No, I'm just making sure I entered the check information correctly. Take your time, Hodge said. I am in no hurry. She smiled for the first time since he stepped in front of her, and then asked, Really? No exciting plans to hit the town tonight? Nope. I'll probably spend the evening in front of the television. That's too bad. That new jazz club around the corner is having its grand opening tonight. Sounds like fun, but I'm not into the club scene. I prefer quiet evenings at home. Me too, but I do like to support our local Black-owned businesses every chance I get. I don't know if you've noticed, but there aren't that many in San Antonio, Brooklyn whispered quietly as to not offend the predominantly Hispanic clientele. There are a few Bobs here and there, especially the closer you get to the east side. But I know what you're saying. If we don't support us, who will, right? I heard that since it's the grand opening, they are serving a pretty decent spread of soul food hors d'oeuvres. I might stop by just for a minute after I get off work, she replied suggestively. Maybe I'll check it out sometime. She cleared her throat and asked sweetly, Would you like to deposit the entire amount? Yes, in my savings account. Just in case you're interested, my primary job is a financial advisor. I'm just temporarily filling in as a teller to help out, but I'll be glad to pencil you in for an appointment next week to go over a few investment vehicles. I appreciate the offer, but I'm already working with someone, but I would like my account balance after deposit. No problem, sir. Brooklyn scanned the check, noting his account balance now totaled over $20 million. She handed the deposit slip to Hodge, wanting nothing more than for him to remain at her window, to keep her company, at least until the bank closed. Maybe she could convince him to accompany her to the club. Thank you very much, miss. He stared at her nameplate. Mrs. Bridges? Please, call me Brooklyn. Brooklyn? Your name is Brooklyn Bridges, as in the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City? Yep, that's my name. She watched his bemused expression as she had hundreds of times from others before. My parents were, well, kind of different. That's very interesting. My mom and dad are artists and native New Yorkers. He chuckled and replied, I guess that explains it. Mom paints and dad plays the trumpet. My parents got their inspiration from the bridge that connects Manhattan to Brooklyn instead of making up a name for me like most of their friends did with their children. They thought they were being original until they discovered my name isn't as unique as they hoped. So why not name you Manhattan? That name seems to be just as popular. I asked them the same question. The lead teller in the space next to Brooklyn gave her the side eye and loudly cleared her throat, wanting her to wrap it up with this customer and move on. Brooklyn ignored the woman and continued explaining. They told me that back in the day, the borough of Brooklyn was where the real people of New York lived. Before it was gentrified, it was a working class neighborhood. Manhattan was exclusively for those with old money or the nouveau rich, or well-off foreigners who could afford to live there, and tourists, of course. My mom still lives there and says it's nothing like it was when she grew up, but she's still holding on to her rent-controlled brownstone. Gentrification takes over and displaces the original residents, huh? Damn shame, Hodge uttered, taking in the ethnicities of the bank's clientele while continuing to listen to Brooklyn. Since our last name was Bridges, my parents got creative and named me Brooklyn. My name is supposed to represent strength. Something as strong and sturdy as a suspension bridge is only as good as the foundation is built upon, right? They wanted my name to mean something, to help give my life purpose. She wistfully sighed and replied, "A lot of good it did, considering I work at a bank." My father always told me and my brother that your present situation does not determine your forever destiny. She laughed and replied, "My daddy's favorite saying was, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step." Sounds like both our daddies were wise men, Hodge and Brooklyn uttered simultaneously before chuckling at the coincidence of having said the same words about one another's father. After Brooklyn quickly regained her composure, while somehow managing to ignore the rising tide of anger emanating from those in line, she admitted, My mom and dad tried to provide me with everything I needed to be successful in life. Most of the time, they did all right." Hodge acknowledged Brooklyn's admiration of her parents. "Your nameplate says Mrs." When he noticed she didn't mind his questions, he asked, "You kept your maiden name?" "Actually, believe it or not, both my maiden name and my married name are Bridges." "Really?" "Yes, really." As much as she liked talking to Hodge, she did not want to have a conversation about the oddity of marrying a man who carried the surname of her family. Despite her husband's Italian ethnicity, her father used to tease her that she was probably marrying a long-lost cousin and would have inbred children. Even to this day, it remained a sensitive topic at her family gatherings. Hodge took heed of her curt response and dropped the subject. "Well, thanks for your help, Mrs. Brooklyn Bridges." He slowly tucked the deposit slip into his wallet while studying the woman watching him. "Did you forget something, Mr. Robertson? I mean Hodge?" she asked with a hint of a suggestion sparkling in her eyes. Something about the tone in her voice caused him to pause. Before he was able to identify the root cause of his hesitation, he uttered, "Yes. On second thought, I need to transfer $10,000 into my checking account and also withdraw $100. A collective groan erupted from the long line of customers. The line was already moving at a snail's pace, and thanks to the chattiness between Brooklyn and Hodge, it had almost come to a standstill. Hodge turned around and loudly apologized in his most sincere voice. "I am so sorry. I almost forgot to cover that check my mother wrote to the hospital. If I don't transfer funds into her account today, the hospital is going to turn her account over to collections. They even threatened to send her home because she couldn't pay her bill." The customers in line quieted immediately, probably thinking of their own mothers. Brooklyn whispered, "Your mother is in the hospital?" Hodge winked conspiratorially, after which he slid his debit card through the scanner again. He waited for his information to return to the screen. "Don't worry, my mother is fine," he whispered. "Okay, whatever you say, Mr. Robertson. But if I were you, I'd be very careful what you release into the universe." "Touché," he replied. Brooklyn completed the transfer. Ever so slowly, She counted out several 20s, a couple of 10s, and handed the bills to Hodge, intentionally allowing her slender fingers to graze his. When the manager approached her window and motioned for her to hurry up with this customer, she ignored him as well. Hodge noticed the teller's touch momentarily linger upon his hand as she counted the bills. He was flattered by the woman's overt flirtations. Brooklyn was completely enthralled by Hodge Robertson's polite and gentle charm, a rarity in men of today. She knew he was married, but so what? So was she. But she also knew that if she didn't make a move in the next few seconds, she might never see this man again. "Is everything all right?" he asked, taking the money from the counter. If it were possible to read minds, she imagined he might turn and flee at the musings of her sinful private thoughts. Thankfully, this was not that situation. The remaining customers in line began to grumble amongst themselves about the amount of time she had spent chit-chatting with the man. "Do you work out?" Normally, she only invited women to her aerobics class, but something about Hodge Robertson, and not just the size of his bank account, made her want to know more about him. "Yes, on occasion. Why?" "I teach exercise classes on Mondays and Wednesdays from 4 to 7 over at the fitness center. Saturday mornings at 8. You should stop by sometime. I can be your personal trainer." She smiled warmly and handed him her business card. Alarm bells immediately went off in Hodge's head. Images of his faithful wife, Sonia, flashed before his eyes as if someone had triggered a spy camera inside his mind. He attempted to swallow the uncomfortable lump of surprise caught in his throat. "Damn, man, would you please hurry it up? I don't have all damn day to be waiting for you to get your flirt on," shouted a short, fat man from the back of the line. Another man shouted, Yeah, y'all standing there conversing like there ain't no damn line. Man, get her number and get the hell out of here." Brooklyn ignored both outbursts. Her focus was strictly on the man who stood before her. "Go on, take it," she smiled again. "I insist." She pushed the card towards him. Hodge stared at the business card as if it were a handwritten invitation straight to hell. He glanced at Brooklyn's left hand, at the thin, plain gold wedding band encircling her ring finger. Each and every cell in his body screamed at him to leave the card where it lay, to walk away and never look back. But, of course, he didn't. He picked up the card from the counter and tucked it inside his wallet along with the cash. "You know what? I just might stop by." Brooklyn raised an eyebrow and then added seductively, "I hope you do." "If you move it along, Mamacita, I'll even come to your damn gym," the fat man shouted, causing others in line to break out in laughter. Hodge backed away from the teller's window with just enough swagger in his gait to draw stares from the female clientele. As he walked towards the darkly tinted entrance doors, he felt Brooklyn's gaze on his back, relishing the attention he hadn't experienced in a very long time. For a brief moment, he wondered if the woman was drawn more to his bank account balance than him. Considering that he was unable to walk just a year ago, he appreciated all the attention he could get. 2 years had passed since he had almost died in that horrible motorcycle accident. And after undergoing a year of intensive physical therapy, to everyone's surprise, especially his beloved wife and son, he had made a full recovery. Thinking about Sonia almost made him turn around to return the card to the very merry Brooklyn Bridges. But he quickly and foolishly rationalized, "I need to look into joining the gym anyway. Maybe Sonia will go with me and we can work out together." And that concludes Chapter 1. The book is currently available on Amazon and will be available on other platforms soon. I hope you take a chance and read it and enjoy. Have a blessed day.